Hey Reasonauts. Every day is awesome. We just have to get through it. Welcome back to Human Velocity X, where my name hasn't been important. The message always has. Before we begin, I want you to remember a moment when your body told you the truth long before your mind could find the courage to believe it. Because today is big. Today is the kind of episode that finally puts words to the thing you've carried for years without language. This is episode 10, and it sits heavier than the rest because it touches something you feel every day of your life. This one is about why you sense danger before it arrives. Not in a mystical way, not in a preachy way, but in the way your body, your awareness, your perceptive wiring has been trying to explain to you since you were young. So settle in. Let this unfold. Let yourself recognize yourself. You feel life before it happens. There's a kind of person, and you are one of them, who doesn't need chaos to know that something's off. They don't need the argument, they don't need the betrayal, they don't need the incident, they don't need the moment. Everything finally breaks open. They don't wait for confirmation. They feel it forming. They feel the tremor before the tremor even decides to move. Not metaphorically, literally. You feel the pressure in a room before the reason enters it. You sense the shift in a person before their behavior reveals it. You catch the emotional drop before the words fall out of their mouth. It's subtle. So subtle, most people miss it completely because they're waiting for something louder, something clearer, something they can point to and say, see, there it is. But you've never needed that. You've always felt the almost, the before, the not yet visible. There's a moment right before something becomes real, where the world makes a small, quiet adjustment. Not a sound you hear with your ears, a signal you feel in your body, a slight tightening, a shift in your breath, a pause that doesn't match the moment. Something changes. And most people move right past it. But you don't. You feel it. You always have. And the wildest part is, you feel it instantly. Before your mind even wakes up enough to question it. Before logic steps in. Before language forms, before explanation even becomes possible. Your system already knows. And then your mind follows behind, trying to catch up to something that already happened inside you. That's not confusion. That's sequence. Body first, mind second. That's awareness. That's your tuning. That's the shape of your attention. You don't scan for information the way most people do. You register shifts. You feel alignment. You feel misalignment. You don't need the full picture. You feel the change in the frame. And here's the deeper truth. Awareness doesn't arrive like a lesson. It doesn't show up one day like something new you learned. It returns quietly, like something familiar, like something that's been sitting just beneath the surface your whole life. Awareness wakes up as a memory, not of events, of self, a recognition, a steady, undeniable realization. I've always been like this. You weren't given this. You didn't develop this out of nowhere. You're remembering it. And once you see that clearly, you stop trying to become aware. You stop chasing it. You stop questioning it. And you start allowing what's already awake to lead. Take a breath. In and out. Breathe. The quiet story you don't tell out loud. Everyone like you has one of these stories. Not the loud ones, not the obvious ones, the quiet ones. The ones you don't tell out loud because you already know most people wouldn't understand them. Not because they wouldn't believe you, because they wouldn't feel what you felt. A story where you knew something was wrong even though nothing looked wrong. Everything checked out. The words made sense, the moment looked normal. The situation didn't raise alarms for anyone else, but something inside you shifted. A moment where the air changed, not dramatically, no scene, no signal anyone could point to. Just enough that your body noticed before your mind had time to ask why. A conversation that felt different, 1 second before it became different. A tone that didn't match the words, a pause that carried weight, a look that passed too quickly to explain but stayed long enough to register. A moment where your ribs tightened for no reason the world would accept as a reason. And you sat there, trying to make sense of something that hadn't happened yet, trying to explain a feeling that didn't have evidence, so you stayed quiet, you watched, you waited. And later, when the truth unfolded, not suddenly, but inevitably, exactly the way your awareness predicted. You didn't celebrate being right. You didn't feel proud. You didn't turn to anyone and say, "I told you so." Because that's not how it felt. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like remembering, like something you already knew finally caught up to the moment. And all you said, maybe not even out loud, was this: "I knew it." Not from ego, from recognition, because you did. Every part of you did. And if we're being honest, you could probably think of 5 more moments just like that without even trying. Different people, different places, different outcomes, same signals, same quiet knowing, same moment where your body spoke first and the world caught up later. And the deeper truth, those weren't coincidences. They were confirmations, proof that your awareness has always been there. Steady, consistent, waiting for you to trust it. The sensory detail you never talk about. There's something else too, quieter than everything we've said so far. Something you don't usually put into words, not because it isn't real, but because you're not sure other people would even know what you mean. It's not a thought. It's not even an emotion. It's sensory, subtle, precise, almost invisible. Sometimes danger doesn't feel like fear. Sometimes it feels like the temperature in the room drops half a degree too fast. Not enough for anyone to say anything. Just enough that your body notices, or like the air gets thicker, not physically. But something about it changes. Breathing feels slightly different. Space feels denser. No one comments on it, but your skin reacts. Or like the world tilts. Just a fraction of an inch. So small, it would sound ridiculous to explain. But you feel it. That micro shift where something no longer lines up and you're the only one who felt it happen. That's the part you don't talk about. Because how do you explain a shift that doesn't have evidence yet? How do you describe something your body registered before reality caught up? So you stay quiet, you observe, you wait, but let's name it clearly. That's not imagination. That is your nervous system interpreting a quiet truth, not reacting to danger, reading the environment as it begins to reorganize. Because here's what's actually happening. You don't see danger. You feel the environment adjusting itself to make room for it. A tone changes, a presence tightens, a pattern breaks slightly, and your system registers the adjustment before the event. Most people are event-based. They notice what happens. You are shift-based. You notice what's changing. That's the difference. Most people don't notice the world adjusting. They wait for impact. You feel the setup. You feel the conditions forming. You feel the before. And that's why it's so hard to explain. Because you're not reacting to something visible. You're responding to something becoming real. And once you understand that, you stop questioning those subtle sensory shifts. You start respecting them. Because they're not random. They're early truth, felt before it's seen. Where this gift really came from. People like to romanticize intuition. They talk about it like it just appeared, like a gift that floated down and chose you for no reason. But you know better. Because when you really look at it, honestly, this didn't come from nowhere. Your awareness was carved into you, shaped slowly, quietly, over time. By the places you lived through, by the people you had to read, by the moments that taught you that danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it walks in gently, sometimes it smiles, sometimes it sits down like it's always belonged there. And if you didn't feel it early, you paid for it later. So your system adapted, not dramatically, precisely. You learned to listen because listening kept you steady. You learned to observe because observation kept things from getting worse. You learned to feel shifts before they became situations, not as a talent, as a necessity. And over time, that necessity became your normal. Your nervous system started doing things your mind couldn't even explain yet. Body first, a tightening, a pause, a subtle internal alert. Then your heart, reading it without words. This isn't right. This feels off. Pay attention. And only after that, your mind would try to catch up, trying to explain what had already been understood. That's how this was built. Not mystical, not random, refined. Your intuition isn't something you were handed. It's something you survived into. It's earned awareness coded into your body long before your mind had language for it. You weren't taught this ability. You were trained by reality to recognize imbalance the moment it begins to form. And here's the part that most people won't understand. People who never had to scan a room don't understand people who always did. People who felt safe early don't always recognize what it takes to build safety internally. So when they hear you describe this, it can sound like overthinking. It can sound like sensitivity. It can sound like too much. But it isn't. It's calibration, built under pressure, refined through experience, held in your body long before anyone gave you permission to trust it. And that matters. Because when you see where it came from, you stop questioning why it exists. You stop minimizing it. You stop explaining it away. You recognize it for what it actually is. A system that learned early how to read truth before it became obvious. And this part is important. Just because it was built through survival doesn't mean it only belongs there. It didn't stay defense. It evolved. What once protected you now informs you. What once kept you safe now helps you see clearly. This isn't just something you went through. This is something you carry forward. Refined, accurate, yours. And whether anyone else understands it or not, this story was never about them. This is your story. And now, you finally see it clearly. Sometimes your intuition whispers, "Hey, something's off." And your brain replies like, "Relax, we haven't even said hello yet." And your intuition is standing there, with its arms crossed, like a disappointed parent. You laugh about it later, but in the moment, it's just one more example of how your system works faster than you allow yourself to admit. Your intuition is never late. It's you who sometimes tries to negotiate with it. Feeling danger for someone else. One of the most confusing parts of this is that it doesn't stay contained to you. It doesn't just scan your life. It reaches outward into the people you care about. And suddenly, you're feeling something that doesn't belong to your story. Your ribs tighten, but nothing in your world is wrong. Your breath shortens, but your path hasn't shifted. Your energy changes, and you can't point to a single reason why. Because it's not yours, it's theirs. You're picking up on a turn in someone else's road before they even realize they're approaching it. You feel the shift forming in them, a decision they haven't made yet, a pattern they're about to repeat, a weight they haven't admitted they're carrying. And your system responds, not with panic, with awareness, body first, a quiet tension, a pull you didn't ask for. Then your heart reads it. This isn't about me. Something's coming for them. Stay aware. And then your mind steps in, trying to make sense of something that doesn't have visible evidence yet. And this is where it gets hard, because when you try to say something, your words come out softer than what you're actually feeling. You hesitate, you second guess, not because you don't trust yourself, but because you can't prove it. How do you explain a storm that hasn't shown up yet? How do you warn someone about something they can't see, can't feel, and aren't ready to believe? So you pull back, or you say it gently, or you say nothing at all. And then later, when it unfolds, when the shift becomes visible, when the pattern completes itself, when the weight finally lands, you feel that quiet recognition again. I felt this already. Not with pride, not with satisfaction, just truth, because you did. You felt the storm before the sky changed. And here's the part that matters most. This isn't anxiety. Anxiety searches for danger. This recognizes it. This is instinct connected to compassion. This is foresight connected to empathy. This is Is your system extending beyond you, not to control, not to interfere, but to understand? Your awareness doesn't stop at your own life. It reaches the edges of the people you're connected to. And that's why it feels so heavy sometimes. Because you're not just feeling your weather, you're feeling the climate around you. But here's the grounding truth. Feeling it doesn't mean you're responsible for it. You can sense a storm without becoming the forecast. You can recognize a shift without caring its outcome. You can care deeply without absorbing completely. That's the boundary. That's the balance. Because if you don't learn that part, this gift becomes weight. But when you do, it becomes clarity. Some people love deeply. They show up when things happen. They support when the storm arrives. You feel it before it forms. You don't just love deeply, you love early. And once you understand that, you stop trying to explain it. You just start trusting what you already know. The cost of knowing early. Let's talk plainly. Knowing early is not glamorous. It doesn't feel like power. It doesn't feel like advantage. Most of the time, it feels like distance. Because being early means you arrive at conclusions before there's a place to stand in them. You see the shift before there's evidence to point at. You feel the change before anyone agrees it's happening. And that creates a gap between you and everyone else. You leave rooms before anyone knows why, not dramatically, quietly. You just stop leaning in. You step back while everyone else steps forward. You pause while everyone else accelerates. And from the outside, it looks like hesitation. It looks like caution. Sometimes it even looks like fear, but inside, it's clarity. You're not unsure. You're early. You speak softly while the truth speaks loudly inside you. You say things like, something feels off, while everything around you still looks fine. And people don't always understand that because they're waiting for impact. They're waiting for something visible, something they can point to, something that proves it. You don't need proof yet, you feel the direction. And that difference, that timing difference can feel isolating because it means you're often alone in what you already recognize. You walk away before the moment goes dark. You stop trusting before the mask slips. You create distance before the damage arrives, not because you're avoiding people, because you're honoring what your system already read. And then, time passes, and the thing you felt becomes visible. The shift becomes obvious, the pattern completes itself, the storm finally shows up. And suddenly, everyone else is where you were months ago. And they look at you differently, confused, curious, sometimes even unsettled. How did you know? And you pause, because the real answer doesn't translate easily. I didn't know, I felt. And that sentence, as simple as it is, doesn't always land, because people who rely on evidence don't always understand what it means to recognize something before it exists in front of them. So you don't push it, you don't try to prove it, you just carry it quietly. And here's the part that matters. This cost is real. But it's not punishment. It's timing. You're not separated because something is wrong. You're separated because you're operating on a different moment in the same sequence. You're not ahead of people. You're just earlier in the pattern. And once you understand that, the loneliness shifts. It doesn't disappear, but it makes sense. You stop expecting everyone to meet you where you are immediately. You stop needing validation for what you already feel clearly. And you start moving with your awareness instead of against it. Because this was never about being right. It was about being aligned with what arrives first. And that has always been you. The moment you did listen and saved yourself. Now let's bring balance. Because this ability, the one that's felt heavy, the one that's made you question yourself, has also protected you in ways you rarely stop to acknowledge. There was a moment, and you knew exactly which one, where your intuition spoke, and you didn't argue with it. No debate, no negotiation, no, maybe I'm overthinking. You didn't ask for permission, you didn't wait for proof, you didn't give it time to become something obvious. You just felt it, that shift, that quiet, unmistakable signal, and you moved. Body first. A decision that didn't need words, then your heart steady, clear. This is enough. This is where it changes. This is where I step back. And your mind, for once, didn't interfere. It didn't try to soften it, didn't try to justify staying, didn't try to rewrite what you felt. It followed. And you left. Maybe it looked small from the outside. A conversation you didn't continue, a place you didn't return to, a person you slowly stepped away from. Nothing dramatic, nothing anyone else would point to as a defining moment. But inside, it was exact. You felt the shift, and you honored it. And then time did what it always does. It revealed. The thing you sensed became visible. The tension turned into conflict. The pattern completed itself. The story unfolded, just like your awareness had already shown you. And you watched it from a distance, not with pride, not with "I told you so," just with that quiet recognition. I'm not in that anymore. I stepped out of that. And that's when it lands. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That wasn't you being cautious. That was you finally trusting yourself without needing the world to agree first. And if you're being honest, that moment changed something. Not just because of what you avoided, but because of what you proved to yourself. You proved that your awareness wasn't something to fight. You proved that your timing wasn't wrong. You proved that you didn't need a second opinion to honor a first feeling. And that matters more than you realize. Because once you have one moment like that, clear, undeniable, you can't go back to pretending. You don't know how this works. You've seen it. You've lived it. You felt the difference between ignoring yourself and standing with yourself. And here's the truth that settles in after. You didn't just leave a situation. You left a version of yourself behind. The version that stayed too long, the version that explained things away, the version that waited for confirmation instead of trusting recognition. That version didn't come with you. And that's why that moment feels different. Because it wasn't just protection, it was alignment. You didn't escape something. You chose yourself at the exact right time. And if you look closely, that wasn't a one-time moment. That was a reference point, a reminder that when you listen early, you don't just avoid damage. You stay in rhythm with what's true. And that's something you can return to anytime you choose to trust what you already feel. Because the next part is where everything comes together. Because you spent years blaming yourself for the moments you ignored the warning, but you almost never give yourself credit for the moments you listened. And that imbalance in how you remember your life is part of what keeps you from fully trusting your awareness. That ends today. The times you blame yourself. Let's go deeper. Because this part still lingers. You carry it quietly, not in your words, in your body. That subtle weight that shows up when you remember the times you didn't listen. The moments where something in you said, "Pay attention," and you chose to stay anyway. You still feel it, that replay. I should have known. I felt it. Why didn't I listen? And it doesn't come with anger. It comes with disappointment towards yourself. But let's slow that down. Because the truth is, you didn't know. Your body registered it, your heart recognized it, your system saw it forming, nothing was missing. The signal was there, you just didn't trust it yet. And that matters. Because there's a difference between not knowing and not trusting what you know. You weren't confused, you were divided. Body saying one thing, heart trying to hold connection, mind trying to make it work. 3 signals pulling in different directions. And in that moment, you chose hope. You chose possibility. You chose to believe that what you felt might not become real. Not because you were naive, because you cared, because you saw something in them, because you believed in what could be. And that's the part don't give yourself enough credit for. You didn't ignore your intuition because you were weak. You made room for someone else's potential, even when your system was already reading their pattern. That's not failure, that's compassion without boundaries, and yes, that comes with a cost. You stayed longer, you absorbed more, you learned through impact instead of recognition. But that doesn't make you wrong, it makes you human. Because growth doesn't begin with perfect alignment. It begins with contrast, it begins with learning what it feels like to override yourself, so you can recognize what it feels like to stand with yourself later. And you've already started doing that. You felt the difference between staying and stepping back, between explaining and recognizing, between hoping and knowing. So when you look back now, don't rewrite those moments as mistakes. See them for what they were. The version of you who chose love before clarity was fully stable. The version of you who honored connection before you knew how to honor yourself at the same time. That version wasn't broken. That version was learning. And here's where the shift happens. You don't need to carry guilt to prove that you've grown. You don't need to punish yourself to show that you understand now. You just need to recognize it clearly. You knew. You just weren't ready to trust it yet. And that's okay, because now you are. And that changes everything. So instead of saying, I should have known, say this: I was learning how to trust myself. Because that's what was really happening. And that version of you, the one who stayed, the one who hoped, the one who gave more than they should have, that version deserves compassion too. Not correction, not judgment, understanding. Because both parts of you were trying to protect you. Your instinct was trying to keep you safe. Your heart was trying to keep you connected. And now, you don't have to choose between them. Now you know how to hold both and move forward with something stronger than either alone. Clarity with compassion. That's the version of you that exists now. The real reason you sense danger early. Here's the truth beneath all the truths. You sense danger early because your awareness is calibrated to imbalance. The second it appears, you read micro shifts. The way some people read headlines, you interpret tone. The way some people interpret emojis, you analyze silence. The way some people analyze conversation, your sensitivity is actually your awareness, moving faster than your logic can translate. You are tuned to the world beneath the world, not spiritually, not mystically, just perceptively. You walk through life with your eyes open in a world where most people prefer to sleep. There was a night, or maybe it wasn't just a night. Maybe it was a stretch of time, a season, where everything felt heavier than it should, where awareness didn't feel like clarity, it felt like distance. Because being early means you arrive to things alone. Being aware means you see what others don't see yet. Being tuned means you hear shifts that no one else is responding to. And after a while, that wears on you. So you had a moment, honest, quiet, where you didn't want this anymore. You didn't want to feel the room before it changed. You didn't want to read people before they revealed themselves. You didn't want to carry awareness that didn't have a place to land. You just wanted normal. To walk into a space and take things at face value, to hear words and not feel what sits underneath them, to trust what's in front of you without scanning what's behind it. You wanted silence, not the kind that reveals, the kind that doesn't ask anything from you. You wanted simplicity, and for a moment, you tried. You ignored the signals, you quieted the awareness, you told yourself, maybe I can just not do this. But even then, it didn't leave, it didn't shut off, it didn't disappear, it just waited. Quiet, steady, unmoved, body still registering, heart still recognizing, mind still trying to keep up. The same sequence, the same awareness still there. Because this was never a switch. This isn't something you picked up along the way. This isn't a habit you can break. This isn't a skill you can put down when it gets inconvenient. This is structure, the architecture of how you move through the world. You can quiet it, you can ignore it, you can delay it, but you cannot remove it. Because it's not something you do. It's something you are. And that realization, that quiet, undeniable moment, that's where something shifts. Not in the world, in you. Because once you see that clearly, you stop trying to get rid of it. You stop wishing it away. You stop negotiating with something that was never optional. And instead, you start asking a different question. Not, how do I stop feeling this? But, how do I live with this in a way that doesn't drain me? How do I move with it instead of against it? How do I let this be clarity instead of weight? And that's the turning point. Because the gift didn't change. You did. You stopped resisting what was always present. You stopped trying to become someone who doesn't feel like this. And you started recognizing this awareness isn't the problem. Misunderstanding it was. And once that lands, deep, steady, clear, you don't feel burdened by it the same way. You feel aligned with it. Not because it got easier, because it got honest. This isn't something you carry. This is something you are. And once you accept that, you stop trying to escape yourself. And you start learning how to stand fully in what's already awake inside you. Everything you've lived, everything you've sensed, everything you've survived has been leading to this truth. Here it comes. If you've spent your life feeling the tremor before the break, if you've walked away from rooms before anyone else noticed the peace leaving, if you've known someone wasn't right without needing proof, if you felt storms before clouds appeared, if you've carried warnings that didn't belong to you, then hear this clearly, not softly, not gently, accurately. You are not paranoid, you are not dramatic, you are not fragile, you are not wrong, you are not imagining anything. You are awake. And being awake doesn't always feel like clarity. Sometimes it feels like distance. Sometimes it feels like being early in a world that moves later, but that doesn't make you misplaced, it makes you precise. You are the radar that hums before lightning. You're the seismograph that feels the fault line shift before the ground admits it's moving. You're the compass that tilts quietly before direction changes. And none of that is fear. Fear reacts. You recognize. You don't sense danger because you're looking for it. You sense it because you're calibrated to what exists beneath performance, beneath words, beneath behavior, beneath the version of reality people present. You feel what's forming that's different. And it always has been. This is not your burden. It only felt like one when you didn't understand it. This is your inheritance, built into you, refined through you, carried by you long before you had language for it. This is not your flaw. This is your fingerprint. The way your system interfaces with truth. You're not hard to understand. You're hard to fool. You're not disconnected. You're not distracted. You're not too much. You're exact, and you're not broken. You're built differently. Different timing, different sensitivity, different sequence. Body first, heart next, mind after, detection, meaning, translation. You don't wait for the story. You feel the shift before the story begins. And yes, that comes with moments of isolation. Moments where you stand in something others haven't reached yet. But that doesn't make you alone. It makes you early. And early has a purpose. Not to control outcomes. Not to prove you're right. To remain aligned with what's true before it becomes obvious. So let this settle. Deep, steady, without resistance. You're not crazy. You're tuned. And once you stop fighting it, once you stop shrinking it, once you stop explaining it away, you don't lose anything. You gain something. Clarity without apology. Awareness without confusion. Movement without hesitation. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start recognizing, this is how I'm built. And that recognition, that quiet, grounded acceptance, that's where everything shifts, because now you're no longer trying to become someone else. You're finally standing as yourself, clear, present, aligned, awake. Reason on. Take a breath. You're not carrying this alone. You're just finally honoring what has always been yours. Dedicated to those who see what others miss, who feel what others ignore, who walk into rooms already knowing what the silence is trying to say. Next time, we're talking about the cost of being self-aware and why people like you are misunderstood more than any other type. Every day is awesome. We just have to get through it. I'll see you in episode 11.